Right? Hey, it's Chris. So what are we talking about today? Obviously, very popular video, I was wrong, right? Where I went into a game with preconceived notions about how good it was going to be, or that I just didn't think it was going to do anything. And, right, the key point, I was freaking wrong, right? Eating crow all the time around here. Now, we're going to go both ways with this one, just like we did with part one, or the first time around, and saying, okay, stuff that I did not expect. Games that didn't meet expectations, games that exceeded expectations. 10 of them. Let's go. You ready? Let's start on the positive, right? Where I eat crow a little bit in a very, very good way. In such a good way, though, that I ended up buying everything I could for it. And that's Wiz War, 8th edition, right? And it's just chaotic wizard battling first to score 2 points. It's incredibly, take that. It's incredibly hard to get. It's overly expensive for a game that's out of print that you may never be able to get a copy of because, you know what? They just said, screw it, let's abandon it and give the 9th edition remastering, retheming, and different art to somebody else. But 8th edition's where it's at. And I bought it on a whim, right? I read Charlie Thiel's review of it, and I was like, you know what? Let's just try it out. Again, one of those, I should not have bought this. Should not have, right? Because sometimes, again, I don't take my own advice about reading the rule book and watching some of the gameplay. I was just like, I like the idea of it. Right? Sometimes that pays off. Sometimes it really, really doesn't. This was one, though, that has exceeded all expectations. I love this game. This is easily a top 25 game. The battling, the chaos, the asymmetry, the just pure moments that this game can create on a map that, again, where you're busting down the walls, flipping them around, shooting things around corner, laying traps down, basically begging for someone to come try and kill you so that you can, well, attack them back and blow them out of the water. And it's a game where I don't even care if I get eliminated because it's just a hell of a lot of fun while I'm getting screwed over because everyone kings of the hill me because I'm the game's owner and they therefore think I'm going to be better than them at it. I'm not. Therefore, I usually end up one of the first people out and stuff like this and King of Tokyo. But again, it's one of those that if it got a reprint that was, the same, right? Like, why mess with the formula? 9th edition. I just don't understand. That thing just tanked when it kind of, it didn't go anywhere at retail, essentially, when it got released from crowdfunding backers. So go with the 8th edition. Don't worry about any other edition. You don't need any other edition from that aspect of things. Secondly, let's just stay with the highs, right? I am sometimes, right, a little bit anti-hype. He said tongue-in-cheek. I'm a lot anti-hype. Okay. But this was one where I resisted it because I just said, I don't want to like it. You cannot convince me that it's going to be that good. People are just looking at the license and going, oh, this is so great because it has a license. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Dune Imperium. Now, not Uprising, actually just the original. And I said, I don't really want this game. But everyone's talking about it. It's on everybody's hot list. So I ended up in a Board Game Geek freaking math trade. If you're not familiar with math trades, A sends to B, B sends to C, C sends to D, D sends to A, right? Like that sort of thing. And they match it up algorithm-wise and they make it work. And usually I get screwed on those things. So I always end up ranking things I really shouldn't. But that's why I don't do them anymore. Anyway, though, I ended up with a copy of Dune Imperium. And the person actually had sleeved it and printed off a 3D it'll inserts on the inside just to hold each individual factions, which now begs the question, how do you do that when you don't want to sleeve your games in the first place? And I have both the expansions, so do I sleeve everything as a non-sleever, or do I unsleeve the original, which both are just a hell of a lot of effort, more than I want to deal with on a daily basis. But I was like, worker placement, not a huge fan. Deck building, huge fan. Dune Imperium, Dune, not a huge fan. And I said, okay, whatever, fine. Played it wrong the first 2.5 times, right? totally was not increasing the faction trackers as I was going and using those actions. And I was like, how the freaking hell are people getting points and playing this game that quickly? And then I played it the right way, and I was like, light bulb! Oh, that's how. Expansion, light bulb! And, well, obviously, Dune Imperium Uprising, which was my #1 game of 2023. So take that for what you will. Which is also why, when we talk about, within the next month, my most anticipated games of 2025, guess what's on the list? Bloodlines. Yeah, Direwolf. Call me. I'm going to buy it. Anyway, I don't need any more Dune Imperium. But it just absolutely exceeded expectations. Fantastic game. Cannot say enough good things about it as someone who just fought against the wave for a long time. So sometimes you don't fight against the wave because the wave actually is right. I'll not say that a ton on this channel because I believe that might and size don't always make right. But there's plenty of that, yeah, you know what? Sometimes it is overwhelmingly good. So then one that was a letdown for me personally, 20 strong. I've talked about this previously. I am not against solo gaming, right? Like the majority of my plays actually for Dune have been solo, surprisingly, right? That's how much I love it. And so I said, I really think that this could be something special with Chip Theory and 20 strong. And the dice-based card randomness, just chaotic, making very strategic decisions could be for me. I explained it wrong in my video. Lo and behold, that doesn't happen very often, does it? Sorry. But at the same time, playing it correctly, it just couldn't change my mind. You know, there's just something when you're playing a game where you just feel like you're going through the motions, right? And I can't explain it in words. The Supreme Court said it best. You know it when you see it. Or in this case, you know it when you play it, right? There are some games cerebrally where you go, I know that this is mechanically solid. I know that other people like this. I know that I should like this. And you just don't find yourself having the most important factor in a game. Fun. And I can't put my finger on it, right? This is a solid engine. But I guess I look at it too with the other asymmetric games of whatever type. Root, the 2-player dueling, Mythic Mischiefs, Summoner Wars, whatever it may be along those lines. Sometimes you just find ones that jive with you and others that just don't. And 2 of the 3 in the original core box just didn't really jive with me that well with what they were bringing. And again, not bad game whatsoever. I think it's a really great solo game if you really like a lot of randomness and chance and trying to mitigate your way out of quicksand, right? But for me, it just didn't work. I'll look at it now similarly to I wish it would have been this. Like I'm looking at Revenant at the time of me filming this that's on crowdfunding, and I go, that's just such a cool concept. I kind of wish that was cooperative too, or cooperative instead, right? Mind Clash cooperative game? That I'd throw money at, right? Instant. I'm still thinking about getting it competitively. That's a whole nother video though. But what I'm looking at in that regard in the same way is this as like a 2-player head-to-head or a 2-player actually meaningfully decision-making, not just solo holding hands together at the table, but like meaningful, like Spirit Island style, you know, going up against stuff. Or, you know, Creel Manor, where you've got that individual enemies getting allocated, but that sort of vibe. And I wouldn't hold your breath that won't eventually come. And I guess I actually prefer some of the newer ones that they put out more with the Cloudspire and the Roth style Wonderland's War with Manny Tremblay. And I think those look much more appealing. So I can't also tell you that I won't dabble back into it, but I can't tell you that I will anytime soon either from that aspect. Secondly, let's talk about one of the biggest disappointments I've ever also had ever, right? In board games. I would love to see something more accessible card-wise, really mechanically driven, like Lord of the Rings, the card game, or the more recent upcoming from WizKids, Star Trek Captain's Chair, in that line of like DC, of particularly, you can guess where I'm going now with this, Batman, right? DC United is not that. I love it for what it is, but it's not that. And when they finally did a miniature version of this, right, of Batman Gotham City Chronicles, man, the hype was over 9,000 without any doubt, right? And I said, I have to have this. I have to have this well before this channel started. And it was a wet dream. I think it was tons of people's wet dream. And even season 2 did amazing. And I think I ended up with some of season 2. Didn't get as much because season 1, right? I mean, this goes back to my unpopular board games video, which may or may not be out before this or after this, where one of those topics is freaking rule books. Companies need to stop cutting corners and actually have people read rule books that aren't associated in any way, zero, shape, or form with the game itself. Because trying to learn a game from people that already know the game versus have no clue are going to give you completely different perspectives. And this one was arguably, in terms of hype and delivery, one of the biggest mismatches. I would make the argument, not just for me, but for a lot of people. After season 1 came out and people said, how the effing deuce are we going to try and learn this? How the deuce are people learning this? And the fact that you couldn't really learn it from the rule book, and the fact that the iconography was crap, and the fact that it wasn't really like a skirmish like battle up, but it was like this puzzle that really couldn't be done unless you sometimes min-max things. And if you saw my part 1 of this video, min-maxing with other games is not what I want, especially out of a Batman, slog 'em, give me tons of villains, just let me roll. And, you know, Shadow of the Bat, based off of Batman, the animated series, is better, but still like almost overly massive, just too much going on too. I say that in a good way as someone who owned it and then also sold it recently in the last year. So it sort of just left a bad taste in my mouth and now makes me trepidatious for anything DC. Now, if they did something else like a Star Trek Captain's Chair, Imperium Horizons sort of vibe, card-driven aspect, I'd be all for it. The upcoming DC Forever from WizKids actually has me really intrigued. So we'll see what comes of that, but huge letdown there. Then, again, I am a huge Scooby-Doo fan. Huge Scooby-Doo fan. And I'm not going the way you think I'm going, right? The Simon one. I like that. It's actually sitting right up back here still, behind Dune Imperium Uprising, with the colored miniatures. And I like that for what it is. It's a nice, lighter, mid-weight, cooperative, can play with my kids' style game. It's not going to be anything groundbreaking, but I have an attachment to it that's probably a little overly healthy in that sense. But Betrayal at Mystery Mansion, as sort of a twist, a re-thematic incorporation of Scooby-Doo, right? Like that should be a marriage made in money, right? Where the IP should be translating to just being rolled off the shelves and family game ad nauseum. And again, rulebook suckage. Rulebook suckage. And scenario suckage. And lack of explanations and understanding of exact minutia of the gameplay mechanics with a rulebook that felt, again, incomplete. And it led to just very difficult explanations and issues with dealing with the scenarios as a whole. And as someone who is constantly teaching games to other people, having to learn them myself and then teach them, you know what? There's nothing more frustrating than to go, oh, sorry guys, I didn't encounter this the first 2-3 times I played it by myself trying to learn it, and I don't know how to deal with it, and I can't find an answer to it in short order, right? Whether that's my kids, my game group, my wife, whatever that may be, that's, you know, very frustrating, and it's also embarrassing. And enough of that just happened with that game. As much as I like what it brings with the dynamics and the clue solving and the end game situation, it just didn't work as well as it should have. The execution was just not in any way what it could have been. And for me speaking, that was a huge letdown. Then I'm gonna throw this one out there. This one's gonna be halvesies, right? This was partially, I didn't think it was gonna be that good, and then I thought these should have been better. So what are we talking about then? We're talking about Azul. Azules, the blues, right? My kids are in Spanish immersion. They know more Spanish after like the first grade than my wife did after doing half a dozen years of Duolingo. Anyway, side note there. Squirrel. So what I'm going with this though is Azul, again, riding the hype was, okay guys, it's this filler abstract style, tile grabbing, matching set collection thing. And everybody loves Azul. Everybody freaking loves Azul. If you don't love Azul, something wrong with you. Just kidding, just kidding. It's just a really nice, solid game. It appeals to a lot of non-gamers that I've played it with as well. It's very potentially hate drafting take that if you play that style. But if you just play casually and you don't want people to completely and utterly dislike you, then you just ignore that and you just don't worry about it and you just lose terribly. And that's also this guy. But then I was like, oh man, there's another Azul coming out. Azul stained glass of Sintra. Ooh, columns instead. Ooh, Azul summer pavilion. Ooh, little matching and the little pieces that make the little stars little figures. Ooh, that looks nice. Ooh, Azul Queen's Garden. A more complex Azul. Oh, Azul crystal mosaic as a little add-on. Oh, Azul Master Chocolatier retheme. Oh, Azul Duel. Okay, the last one actually sounds freaking appealing to me, but the problem is I'd make the argument that the simplicity of the streamlined version of the original is still the masterpiece, and all of those subsequent iterations, they just aren't as good. Sintra and Summer Pavilion, just complete and utter letdowns. Queen's Garden as well, just kind of meh, right? None of them capture the essence that is distilled in the beauty of the simplicity of the original. I'm hoping that Duel can do that in sort of a Splendor Duel manner, but it's also worrying me that it's just following the hype train of the Duel thematic everything that everyone's seemingly doing here in 2024 and early 2025 with this one. So I kind of went back and forth on that one, and I actually got rid of all of my Azules. I got rid of my original after I got the other two because I was like, I don't need the original anymore. Guess what game I wouldn't mind getting back again? The original over all of the rest. No qualms, no questions, right? No doubt in my mind that that is the best one as a whole. Yeah, and I'd like the Joker tiles too. That's besides the point. Then, Dead of Winter. Now, which way is he going to go with this one? Ooh, Dead of Winter, right? Plaid Hat Games. I remember this was one of my first big purchases as a board game newbie when this came out. I picked this up at Barnes & Noble when I was living elsewhere, before my wife and I moved back to where we're finally living in Michigan. And I remember being like super trepidatious, right? And it was Barnes & Noble and it wasn't available anywhere else. And I didn't know any like friendly local game stores where we were because we were only there temporarily for my job. And so I had a coupon for Barnes & Noble, I think, or gift card, maybe 2. I don't know, whatever. Combination. Doesn't matter. It's not part of the story that matters, right? And I bought it. And I just remember feeling like really happy, but also like super scared. Because like, you know, that feeling when you're starting out in the hobby and you get a game and you're like super excited about it, but you also have absolutely zero clue if it's actually going to be a good fit for you because you just haven't played anything. And I was like, well, it's kind of cool. It's got some zombies and post-apocalyptic stuff. And I think you roll a die, maybe? I don't know. And I actually ended up from the friendly local game store, had a, what was it, Tabletop Day? That was like the first or second year of Tabletop Day. Will Wheaton's channel. And they had the promos. And I ended up actually winning the Felicia Day Dead of Winter promo there, which was awesome. And I used it. And it was great. And it was a great card for the game. But where I'm going with this is Dead of Winter, both, again, like Azul, exceeded and now has kind of not been something I've gone back to. And I feel really good because it was a really good intro game. It was a really good introductory to the hobby game. I'm not going to make the argument to you that it's perfect. I'm not going to make an argument to you that the, Hidden Trader co-op is done super well. Frankly speaking, I just don't even use that, and I don't let anyone be a trader, and we just all have a good time holding hands, kumbaya. Because, again, you can still get screwed by rolling the red die and getting the tooth and being really, really dead the first single turn of the game moving between locations. Not that that's happened 2 or 3 times. It's also now going full circle, a game I'm going to teach to my 10-year-old because I think it's the perfect weight, it's the perfect dynamic from a cooperative style of things to give him some intro to some of those mechanics and just being, harebrained, scheming sort of fun. And from that style of things, it has exceeded many other games in my collection. And its longevity to be still in my collection, I think we're talking 10 years now, is pretty freaking amazing. So I was wrong in the sense that I thought I was going to get rid of it, and I thought I was past it, and I thought I outgrew this game. I outgrew it. I'm no longer at that point. You're never not at that point, right? You know, everyone changes and changes with the seasons of what games they can get played and what they enjoy. And sometimes you change a lot, and sometimes it just goes full circle. And that's what Dead of Winter has done for me. Now, we're not talking about Long Night. We're not talking about Warring Colonies, those things. Well, if you want to talk about I was wrong, right? I thought Long Night was going to be amazing. Thought it was going to be like a 2.0 edition. Nope. Again, original. Warring Colonies. Holy crap, that is awful. The premise behind it is great. The execution, the length, no. So then we're talking about another one that exceeded my expectations. Again, one I picked up in a trade. I got El Grande in a trade when it was out of print. And I got the big box because it was the only thing you could get at that point. I traded it for Nancy Narkin, crowdfunding that I backed. So basically trading one area control style of game for another. Straight up swapsies at that point. And I didn't have high expectations. But the reason I traded for it, I watched Shut Up and Sit Down's video on El Grande. And what really impressed me and what has stayed with me ever since that video, and I think it's a highly underrated and under talked about point all the time, is in their review, they very clearly are like, this is the rule book. This is the depth of strategy and what's on the table. You can learn it. And Quince just like flips through it and he's like, this is how many pages it is. It's like 5 pages. That's all you need. That's all you need. And I was like, I'll decide for myself. Thank you very much. But yeah, it's true. It's super take that. It's super king making, pounce on the leader sort of style of things. But I love the drafting of the card economy there, and then taking your turns and moving the king around to block areas. It just works. I don't know how to describe it. And I think modern game designers really need to look back at this and another game that's a little bit more of a dry Euro that'll be in the part 3 of this when I eventually do that. Hansa Teutonica, in case you're listening or in case you're paying attention to this part of the video. Spoilers right there. Of just, you don't need a 30-page rulebook. Sometimes you let players play the game, not you try and coach them through the 37 different minutiae that they need to remember and recall and mitigate. And El Grande is just a master class in less is more. And again, more games should be like that than anything else. Because as someone who's read probably, 230 plus page rule books on crowdfunding this year easily, probably way underestimating that as a whole too. Because, even like the last 2 or 3 roundups I've done prior to filming this, there's usually like 3 to 5 that are that long every single week that are raising hundreds of thousands of dollars. Right? Take that for what you will. Interpret that how you want. Then we're going to go back down the other rabbit hole and we're going to say Carnival of Monsters. I was like Richard Garfield, capturing monsters, turn by turn, phase by phase, drafting sort of situation. This, part of a, trilogy that they were making and sort of this thematic incorporation of these crazy monsters and sort of Pokemon card style, only like not actually Pokemon at all, but just the capturing thing of things. It just seemed like a good thing, and it just didn't work. It was okayish. It just fell flat. I mean, the simultaneous drafting is super nice. The randomness is a hit or miss because I do enjoy that, but the same deck of cards in all 4 rounds and just the implementation of it as a whole just kind of left me wanting the whole time. Just not as much synergistic effect between the cards, and it's just frustrating if you're not familiar with it. So it gains repeated play value, but just lighter in the sense that I didn't feel like there was as much meaningful interaction and depth of gameplay I wanted there. And again, just one that I said, in the field of so many of this weight, time frame, mechanic, I just can't endorse it, or even something preferably even like a 7 Wonders. So I just ended up, again, selling it on the cheap, I think, after getting it. So not staying around hardly at all. Then the only GMT game I've ever bought, and will never buy a GMT game again, because, you know, they mark it up about 30% what it ends up coming to retail because they think you can only get it that way in the first place. But one of the heaviest games in my collection, one of the games I have not played nearly enough to evaluate it on how good it is or not, but Dominant Species Marine, when that was announced, I looked at Dominant Species as a game that people had always clamored for in the top Board Game Geek 100 and said, this is amazing. And then it said Marine, and I really liked the incorporation of the underwater theme and the slight twist in the mechanics that this one brought versus the original. I don't have a lot of area control. I don't have a lot of the action sort of progression system that this uses as you're moving your workers down, and you can move them as far as you want, but you can't move back up, and so you have to go sequentially down as far as you want on a turn-by-turn basis, and then sort of mixing that with area control and drafting the cards from the other side of the board. It really brings a unique experience of making an ecosystem and just having crazy stuff and crazy rules applied as you're going along. It's just longer and heavier than a lot of the stuff that we play ever. So, you know, I can't tell you that I haven't been tempted to get rid of it, but it's actually sitting right up there under Power Plants, if you're looking closely, next to Trekking Through History, which is right aside from Hansa Ducanica. And it hasn't really ever budged from that spot. And so have I played it nearly enough to value it and, you know, potentially tell you that it deserves to stay? No. But I do really like what it brings to the table in those aspects. And I probably in the minority that enjoy that one over the differences that were in the first one with Dominant Species. Personally speaking, I like the randomness of the terrain tiles. I like the swinginess of this game that is, well, for a lot of Euro players, per the comment section, something that they absolutely and utterly hate from a slightly more strategic game overall. And like I said, this game is not as relatively well received as the original, but the original, again, has years and years on the second edition as a whole. So to still be ranked 743rd overall compared to 93rd for Dominant Species is pretty fantastic. But it's also, like I said, it's a very mean game with the area control aspect and with the worker placement spots. And the other main problem is, like I said, length. It drags a little bit at the end in terms of the end game triggering. So it's not ideal a lot of the time, and I'm not sure if I'd want to ever play it with more than 3 people in that way. So that one is still in my collection, but you know, years to come, I could see myself going either way just because I am a little bit on the fence and it's outside of my usual norm in that case. So there you go. That is my 10 that I was completely and utterly wrong about in some way, shape, or form. As always, happy to eat crow on some of these. And sometimes the crow tastes better with ketchup. So that's all I got. Have a great freaking day. Let me know. Again, what ones stand out to you when you think through things? And, you know, some of these, truth be told, like, I had to go through my Board Game Geek collection and look through stuff I either had that I was like, I don't really need this or want this anymore. And then I also had to look through these are the games I've gotten rid of pile as well to say, oh yeah, I completely forgot about that because I was really wrong about that one, which is why, guess what? There'll eventually be a part 3 of this too. Thanks for watching. Stay classy.